I tried to like start texting him, you know, a little bit and have a little bit of discussion. And he always had like, it was like this thing he was dangling in front of me where I always felt like he was almost going to start talking to me, almost, you know, open up. And a year into it, he, by the way, in the process of this year, he pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. He left Al Qaeda, so I was able to sort of, I was able to get something, you know, out of this. And a year in, he finally said, Rukmini, you know, I have something to tell you. And I'm like, yes, what, you know, what are you going to tell me? And please, you know, this is something quite sensitive. And I said, oh, sure, great, you know, go ahead. And he said, you remind me of a woman I wanted to marry. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God, you know, like, you know, all of that effort for that.
Boy, I've been recording a very long time. That's never happened.
Right.
Oh, God.
Right. And,
getting hit on by Al Qaeda.
Right. Right.
How did this get resolved?
I'm married. I'm happily married. And he actually sent me a message. The last time we spoke was 3 or 4 months ago, and he sent me a message saying that he's just gotten married. It's like, good.
Some major figures in American politics and also in the foreign policy world, ranging from the head of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass, to Leon Panetta, who headed the CIA and the Pentagon, have used the same metaphor to describe what's going on in the Middle East in particular, which is that it's going to be a 30 years war. Why is this going to be with us for so long? What is the complication? How do you see it ending?
Oh my God. Honestly, I don't see it ending. I mean, I wonder if in our lifetime we're going to see the end of this, because what I see...
Maybe we should define what this is. What that means what?
The problem of extreme Islam. But on the other hand, militarily, what I saw in northern Iraq and in Syria is that when you put real force against them, it's like pushing on an open door. And this is what happens with these groups, is I think if you have a real force pushing them back, they fold very quickly. The problem is you then have to stay. And thus the United States or any Western power, do they want to stay, you know, in these places? And now the question isn't just staying in Iraq. Now the question is staying in Iraq, Syria, Libya, Nigeria, pretty soon Somalia, the Sinai. They're trying to take over Bangladesh, Afghanistan. I mean, you know, and not to mention the suburbs of Paris. And so that's
why your forecast is for a very, very long.
I think so, because I think it's what I've seen about this ideology is it's almost like a poison that enters the groundwater. And how do you get it out?
Rukmini, thank you so much, and I'd love to have you back again.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure.
Rukmini Callimachi is a foreign correspondent for the New York Times. New Yorker staff writer George Packer covered the war in Iraq and went on to write the book The Assassin's Gate. He's written about American politics and many other subjects, but he still writes about the causes of extremism and its victims.
I met Omar Mahdi in 2005 while I was covering the Iraq War. He was a doctor before the war, and he went on to work for Western NGOs and eventually as an interpreter for journalists, starting with me. He had a phenomenal memory. He was calm in every situation, and he was an objective and non-sectarian Iraqi, and all those things made him the ideal person to work with in the most dangerous years of the Iraq War. He and I became very good friends, and as the situation in Iraq deteriorated into a civil war, I worried about Omar's safety. His 2 younger brothers were kidnapped. Fortunately, he was able to get them released. Another was tortured, shot twice in the head, survived but was horribly wounded. And finally, Omar's father was abducted by a Shia militia, and Omar found him in the Baghdad morgue. When was that, Omar?
That was in 2007. When someone dies, usually we take them to a place where they wash them, and my friend Ali Fado gave me a digital camera and he told me to take a picture to the body, and he said that will be a proof on what you've gone through. And I remember they put my father on like a concrete, almost like a concrete step where they put the body on before they wash them, and I hold the digital camera in my hand trying to take pictures, and I just looked and said, that's unfair. I don't want someone to see him like that. You know, you see him partially decomposed. There was like maggots and worms coming out of him, and I just said, I can't do that. And I shut down the camera and I left, and we buried him that day. And by then I knew that that's it. There's nothing left for us, and I managed to get my family to Syria.
What I remember from that time, Omar, is just the feeling that everything was over in Baghdad, but you couldn't leave because you had applied for a Fulbright. I remember writing you a letter for you, and then month after month after month went by while you waited for the visa. Even after you were approved for a Fulbright scholarship, you had to wait for the visa. And I just kept thinking, every day he waits, he is a day closer to him getting killed, and I just wanted you to get out of there. And you and Ayad, your friend, were living together, almost like hiding in a house in Mansour, hardly ever going out, and waiting, both of you, to hear whether you had gotten your visa to the United States. Finally, you got the visa, and you flew, of all places, to Muncie, Indiana, where you became a journalism master's student at Ball State, right?
Yes.
It's crazy to an American to think you go from Baghdad to Muncie, Indiana. It just seems like you couldn't have gone farther away.
That's true, and I was overwhelmed how quiet and silent the town was. And in the first week, I wasn't even unable to sleep because you're used to the noises in Baghdad and the helicopter sounds and the machine guns and explosion going on here and there, and suddenly I'm in this peaceful place where literally you hear nothing. And one night in particular, I remember I used to sleep and leave the window open, and suddenly there were this like loud bang, and I just like jumped from the bed, and I was like, where is this? And it was the trash truck, the dumpster, and when they put it back, it banged. And so it was like, it brought painful memories. But I think in a way going there also helped me heal, because it was just quiet, peaceful, and at Ball State everybody was really friendly and nice to me.
And eventually your family came over too, your mother, your sister and her family, and your younger brothers, right?
Yes, they, as I said, before I left Iraq, I moved them to Syria. They applied for the United Nations Refugee Organization, seeking resettlement in safer country.
I'm wondering how you see the current crisis of refugees and how it compares with the situation you and your family were in.
First thing, I think we are lucky that we got here and we were able to rebuild our lives. I feel really sad that those people, they might never be able to come here. It's not easy going through what they've been through, and they had to leave everything and literally leaves with their clothes on them, like what we did. I met few people that through work or through other friends, and they told me later that when they first met me, they were suspicious of me. But then after they knew me, these suspicions resolved, and we became good friends. And I find it really hard now because the problem is the leaders or the candidates, they encouraging this fear, and they are encouraging this division.
We could start, Omar, with the governor of your own state of Indiana, and I should say you're now an American citizen, and you are a doctor again at a hospital in Indianapolis, which is a great thing. But the governor of your own state refused to allow a Syrian family to be resettled there, and they had to be redirected from John F. Kennedy Airport to Connecticut, which welcomed them. I wonder how that made you feel as a resident of Indiana.
It really made me feel sad, because that's, first of all, let's talk about this family themselves, who came from horrible situation, and they're looking forward to a new life. They want friendly faces who smile at them. That's all what I wanted. And then they arrived and they hear this terrible news that you're unwelcome in Indiana, and luckily they find another state that welcomed them. And here in Indiana, that tells the people that we cannot trust those people. We cannot trust whoever comes from the Middle East. And I think this made damage to the relationships between people here.
Did the mass shooting in San Bernardino, California change anything for you, Omar? I think for some Americans it seems to have sent a huge current of fear, unlike anything I've ever seen in this country in my lifetime. And I'm wondering if you felt it there in Indianapolis.
I have felt it. I was in the hospital when this happened, and I immediately paused. I was going to see a patient, and then I saw the breaking news came on my phone, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And the whole night I had anxiety. I could hear my heart beating in my neck. I just wanted to hear what's going on, and I became more concerned when they say they were like, this is not like other mass shooting. There were 2 people, 3 people, and things were organized. And again, I was like, I hope it's not a Muslim. And that's usually the thought that comes to me whenever I hear shooting or something bad happen. And then I finished my shift. I went home, and I was still, they were still didn't announce any names. And then I think around 11 or so, when they said the name, and it was Saeed Farouk, I remember, and I cursed. I was like, that's it. That's gonna even get the backlash. And usually I wake every morning on my alarm is set on NPR, and I immediately went to my clock and I turned it off because I didn't want to hear the news in the morning, because I knew this will be really bad. I knew there will be a big backlash, and unfortunately that's what happened. And again, Donald Trump, he started to add all this inflammatory response, and he wanted to ban all Muslims. So he's telling people, look around you, whoever looks like a Muslim, this is a risk, or this is a potential threat to you.
Yeah. But you're here and you're not going to be going anywhere. And I'm going to remind you, Omar, that you owe me a visit.
I will come and visit, I promise.
You better. Take care, Omar.
Thank you. You too.
Omar Mahdi, a doctor in Indianapolis, talking with George Packer. This is the New Yorker Radio Hour. Stick around.
The New Yorker Radio Hour is supported by Squarespace, providing tools to create a professional website. Learn more at squarespace.com/radio hour. Squarespace, build it beautiful. And by Audible.com, a provider of downloadable audiobooks and spoken word content with a wide range of titles, including new releases. Learn more at audible.com/radio hour.
The year is over, so let's start bad-mouthing it. It's part 2 of our year in review with Mad Men's Matt Weiner, comedian Jenny Slate, and all the news we are glad will never happen again. I'm Peter Sagal. Celebrate the new year by hating on the old one with Wait, Wait, your news quiz from NPR.
Today at 11 on WNYC.
WNYC support comes from the New York Review of Books, a journal of ideas. The current issue's Showtime section reviews Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton, Mikhail Baryshnikov's Brodsky, and Frederick Wiseman's In Jackson Heights. More at nybooks.com.
If Britain did pull out, this would be devastating for the European Union.